To access the sandy tar-like substance, the land referred to by the industry as overburden is removed and saved for future reclamations. Cranes and 400-ton trucks haul the bitumen off to extraction plants where, in order to separate the sand from the bitumen, it is mixed with large amounts of fresh water, heated by natural gas. It is then spun with a chemical solvent to further remove clay and minerals, leaving the remaining wastewater to be dumped into enormous toxic tailings ponds. The siphoned-off bitumen is then sent into pipelines to be processed into crude oil throughout North America.
Fort Chip is very unique in the political scene because of the two First Nations and the Métis group that are situated here in Fort Chip, and our ancestors have lived here for thousands of years. We consider this area here to be our homeland, and you know, Fort Chip is also our homeland.
When you look at the community of Fort Chip, we are at the receiving end of every bit of pollution that goes into that river. The government will say, oh, we consulted with you. No, you never did. Industry consulted with us. It's a third party now. We're talking about land, we're talking about water, air, everything.
Let's be very clear. Alberta is not about to close the door to further investment. We want to make sure that we have an environment and an economy that in both cases are vibrant, that we can pass on to our children and our grandchildren.
Much of the oil hidden in the sands beneath Alberta's boreal forest is being surface mined. To access the bitumen, huge tracts of trees are clear-cut and the topsoil is scraped away, turning a once lush region into a vast moonscape.
You know, somewhere down the line, something's going to have to give, and maybe the people are going to have to move away from here just for their own well-being. Compensating, is it going to help? For what? For who? My own brother-in-law, as we speak right now, has cancer, colon cancer right now, and, you know, so...
What is making people in Fort Chipewyan sick? The people who live there think they know what it is. Pollution from Alberta's oil sands.
Well, a study was done by one of those oil sands companies, and it found that there could be as much as 400 times the safe limit of arsenic in the moose meat, which is known to cause cancer. And people had long suspected something was wrong because of the number of their relatives dying of cancer.
I don't know when we're going to get results for it, but I hope it's soon. You know, like if my mom's got to go through chemo and radiation, I'm not going to sit at home and work, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'm going to be in Edmonton with her. Like, it did bother me for a long time after I had my cancer. I thought, oh my God, I have cancer. Like, holy shit, I had cancer. Like, my God, I was 17. You know, like I'm a good person. Like, what did I deserve to get cancer at 17 years old? What did I deserve to have some lady tell me, you can't have kids? You know, like, I can't say, yes, it was from the water. Yes, it is from the air. Yes, it was from, the vegetables that grow in the ground here. Or, my mom plants vegetables behind her house. I can't say, yes, it is from that. But there is something in my mind that's saying, yes, it is, yes, it is.
It began to dawn on me that, there's something not quite right here, I think, But as you can see here, you're in the trenches. You can't see the wood for the trees sometimes, So, we're going to get sort of clusters of colon cancer, prostate, lung. Then we had some white blood-related issues, lymphomas, leukemias. Cholangiocarcinoma, we've got 3 cases in 1,200. We should be seeing maybe 1 in 100,000 according to the statistics we're told. when you realise what the community is exposed to from south and east of here, and realise that, you know, there is a direct correlation between some of these chemicals and radiation and the tumours, the types of tumours that we're seeing. My gut feeling is that there cannot be a disconnection. There has to be some connection with industry and what's happening here.
Since the invasion of Iraq, and this is the period where the price of oil has skyrocketed, the number one supplier of oil to the United States is not Saudi Arabia, it's not Mexico, it's Canada.
It's clearly winners and losers out of the Iraq War, and if the Iraq War had not taken place, then obviously we would not have the massive boom in Alberta.
%90 of the fresh water used by the oil sands industry ends up in gigantic man-made tailings ponds. One of the ponds spans 16 square kilometers. Scientists say a significant breach of the ponds would result in an environmental catastrophe equivalent to 300 Exxon Valdez spills.
Tailings ponds are a mixture of processed water, water that comes from the processing of the ore. So we would be looking at a host of maybe 25 or 30 different kinds of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, heavy metals, arsenic, mercury, cadmium, zinc, iron, naphthenic acids, you name it. There's a tremendous diversity of organic compounds that are in this complex bitumen and that eventually get into the tailings ponds and into the air. Every tailings pond in the tar sands region leaks. Every one leaks every day, 24 hours a day. The best studied of the tailings ponds is Tar Island Pond 1, which is situated in the most unfortunate geographic position right on the banks of the river, built 300 feet high above the river. It leaks 67 liters of toxic tailings waters per second. 67 liters per second to the Athabasca River. That's only one of the tailings ponds, and that's one of the less toxic of the tailings ponds.
In about the middle 80s, there was an environmental assessment of the seepage management from that dam, which I was a part of with others for behalf of the province of Alberta. And Red Canadian Oil Sand, the Suncor predecessor, was obliged to collect all the fluid from its drains and put it back in the pond, which it's been doing since then. Nevertheless, there is still some seepage through the foundation out into the river. I can't. It's a modest amount of water measured, perhaps in some tens of liters per second, and it's monitored intensely for fish impacts and small invertebrate impacts and so on, and no impact has been detected. So in terms of, and that's I think it's correct to say that's the worst, if you like, of the seepage issues getting into the river today.
There was an old couple that lived here. They died last winter. Yeah, the old lady died of cancer again, and the old man just gave up. He didn't want to live no more. He died in February. He died in October. Yeah. We used to go on the edge of the rocks down here. We'd have a hook and a long pole, and we'd jig it, and we'd catch these things called ling cod. And they were plentiful. We'd catch 50 or 100 a night. We've dabbled with nature for so long, we screw it up every time. Leave it alone. Yeah.
For me to say there's concerns about fish and stuff, boy, it's hard for me. It's really hard. And this one here, you'll see the large cyst on its side. You know, you're doing this thing to the river, you're putting stuff in the river. You have to make available a place where we can send you samples to show you the results of what your actions may be doing to the fish or vegetation.
And if you can't freeze the fish to get them to, I mean, how are you supposed to get the fish to them?
I phoned him. His name was Dan. And I said, Dan, well, how am I supposed to get it? He said, you're supposed to preserve it in formaldehyde. Well, I have nothing like that. In my estimation, my opinion, the Alberta government has no clue
as to the actual state of the Athabasca River. And they continue to grant water license approvals for project after project that requires millions of cubic meters of water per project. I mean, there's been an obvious observation from our people in the community that something's wrong with the water, possibly. That there are so many of our people dying of cancers that are so rare, according to our doctor, that you shouldn't find these types of cancers. There's so many in a small population of our community. So naturally, it forced our local health authority to look into it further, independent of government, independent of industry, because all their studies have suggested everything is fine up here. But when you bury 26 people in 1 year, 100 people, according to an elder, 100 people since the year 2000, that's extraordinary. That's unfathomable. And I mean, when you put all that together, we have to do something. And I suspect that tonight's meeting is going to confirm a lot of our fears, because many of the people who've died of the cancers are people who eat a traditional diet on a regular basis. So it's really frustrating.
This meeting is specifically for you, the community members. So with that, again, I'm happy you're here, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Kevin Timoney to you, and he will take the floor. Thank you.
Alrighty, as Donna told you, there's been some concern in the community about the quality of the water and the sediments and contaminants in the wildlife and how that might be related to diseases in the community. So a quick overview of what we found. In the water, the following things sometimes are a cause for concern in terms of their high levels. Arsenic, aluminum, and you can see chromium, cobalt, copper, iron. These are all metals, heavy metals. Lead, phosphorus, selenium, titanium, phenols. In the sediments, the things of most concern are arsenic, cadmium, PAHs, and resin acids. And mercury levels in the fish present a serious concern for human consumption. Overall, the three contaminants of most concern are arsenic, PAHs, and mercury. Yes, Jackson?
You see, all this fish have a lot of mercury and all types of sickness in them. Did you check the muskrats and beavers? They live in the water too. Do they have these types of sickness too?
It's a very good question, and I wish I could give you more information on that. I know from talking to many trappers that what they tell me is quite often they're finding muskrats with bloody noses, and they're finding rats when they open up the rat house. Sometimes the rat houses smell of oil. So I think that really seriously needs to be studied. It just hasn't been looked at enough. Now, there's a lot of controversy about arsenic in your water and in your wildlife. Recall a couple of years ago, Suncor did a study where they estimated that if you eat the moose and the fish and the berries from the area, there will be about 312 to 453 additional cases of cancer per 100,000 people in the population. Now, when those results were released, Alberta Health and Wellness then commissioned another study. So the second study concluded that the first study was not reliable and that you didn't need to worry and that the actual arsenic levels were much lower. At any rate, they concluded that there'd be 17 to 33 cases of additional cases of cancer per 100,000. But both studies concluded that the number of additional cancers were above what is considered the 1 in 100,000 that is considered acceptable. So then I reviewed the Alberta Health and Wellness report that said that everything was fine with the arsenic. And what I found was that the Alberta Health and Wellness report used some really questionable statistical methods and assumptions. They underestimated the levels of arsenic in the water. There were just mistakes in their data and in the sediment. And they underestimated the amount of fish that people in Fort Chipewyan eat. So I would conclude that since you have higher arsenic levels in the water and sediments than elsewhere,
and that there's a very clear link between arsenic and many of the kinds of diseases that you have in your community, that this is a red flag item that really needs to be studied in some greater detail.
Did you say that there's a cover-up on the ecosystem environment that's contaminated to our system here?
I'm not sure I'd use the word cover-up, but certainly something like that. I would say what's happening is that the government and industry have a lot of data that, number one, indicate that there's a problem, and number two, that they're not telling you about it. So is that a cover-up? I guess you could call that a cover-up.
Does your department investigate at all the kind of deformities in the fish and those kinds of things that the natives of Fort Chippewa are talking about?
No, not directly. What we are doing is continuing what we believe is our responsibility to have ongoing monitoring of the quality of the water. Anecdotal evidence of deformities are not restricted to the Athabasca River.
Even though Dr. Timoney used official data in his report, the government of Alberta maintains there were no serious problems resulting from oil sands development. But Timoney and others are still worried, especially with the rising levels of chemical compounds called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs.
PAHs are a very well-known, well-documented cause of cancer and other forms of, say, vascular damage or kidney damage, liver damage, skin damage. And they also have an interesting co-exposure or synergistic effect with arsenic. We know that arsenic is a potent carcinogen, and it's associated with some of the forms of cancer that are observed in Fort Chippewa. When you put arsenic and PAHs together, the carcinogenic effect can increase by 8 to 18-fold. And this is exactly what we have in the water and in the sediments of the river and in the delta.
Independent reports have been saying there is arsenic or there are PAHs that are being discovered. Do you feel like there needs to be more studies done in light of that?
Right. See, when people have concerns about their health, whether it's real or not, we need to take that into account. So we are going to continue to do studies, continue to do monitoring, just to give them that comfort. But because we have no discharge into the Athabasca River of any processed water, and because we have monitoring information, we don't see anything that has been added. They talk about arsenic. It has always been under the guidelines. They talk about mercury. It has been what is there naturally. The oil sands outcrops into that river naturally. So if you take a boat ride in the summer, you can see seepage on the riverbank. So obviously the Athabasca River downstream of oil sands will have certain polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons that may not be found in other rivers because there isn't that hydrocarbon entering the river. But that's natural.
Some of the under-the-table things that have happened with response to Timoney's report are one thing that I was talking about before. Mercury levels were always high up there. Well, that isn't really the name of the game. Sure, they probably were high, but are they higher since we've been mining? They say that he showed, well, his report says that he found increasing PAHs with time. They say that's all shifting bottom sediments and so on. It's a coincidence. So it's happened at 4 sites. Seems to me that's about as likely that it's a coincidence as flipping 4 heads in a row if you're flipping a coin.
If I could take you as the one that you love, I'm thinking of the things that we're dreaming of. Life could be sweet for us. Oh, 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 life could be fine. It could be richer than the redness of wine.
It's really excellent to see so many of you here today from Ontario and Quebec and Manitoba and the East, as well as from Alberta. I like to say we're at the point where the sector is about to grow up. For the 25 years prior to 1990, the oil sands was a speculative business, a real testament to the entrepreneurial spirit and drive that we pride ourselves on. A money pit. It was small, it was messy, and it took a lot of investment. Sounds like a brand new baby to me. Like all babies, it had a great big name, Great Canadian Oil Sands, that it had to grow into. Along came a sibling by the name of Syncrude. Now the millionaire's family is set. At the time, like all good parents, the owners and regulators are starting to realize that the problem with kids is that they just start to have minds of their own. They don't act just like you'd hoped. They do some things better, and some things need change.
Has our need for oil become greater than our need for water? Fresh water has already become a scarce resource. We think of it as being infinite, but of the world's total water supply, only 0.5% is accessible fresh water. The oil sands mining operations use up to 4 barrels of fresh water to produce 1 barrel of oil. This water comes from the Athabasca River system, which is fed from glaciers at the base of the Rocky Mountains. Not only does the industry suck up large quantities of fresh water, but it will soon produce more carbon emissions than all of Canada's passenger cars combined. The oil produced by industry contributes to a cycle of consumption that accelerates climate change, further destroying the very glaciers that feed this delicate cycle.
Yeah, we should go check out the Huckleberries this week. Down there.
Lot less glaciery, like, you know, the mineral juice.
Get that much, wasn't it? Really good stuff in there.
Yeah, it has like a spicy flavor or something to it. I don't know, it's different. My family business, Mountain Light Springwater Company, has been operating for the past 10 years. We're one of probably 3 spring water companies in Alberta that has, you know, an actual spring. We used to bottle 14,000 bottles a month, and now we're bottling 800 a month. For me to go and discuss this and say, well, look, these water companies should only be allowed to take so much. I mean, that's a joke considering what the oil and gas companies are using. Like our fresh water, they're using so much of it. The rivers are down. All the rivers are down. Like it's just everyone's feeling it now.
So, yeah, that's basically what it's all about. There's an oil rig there, it's right next to our spring. Nobody told us about it. We're really concerned. We haven't seen any data to suggest, and nobody seems to know who's responsible for protecting the water up there, and nobody wants to take this on, and the EUB's hanging up on me.
There's no overflow at all. Maybe there's something wrong with cribbage.
Oh, no, it's low.
Holy shit!
Low?
There's nothing in there. You know there's no fucking water. It's because they're taking it out of the ground up there for what they're doing there for the drilling rig.
Yeah.
That's why. That's where they're taking all the water out of the ground, out of the aquifers. That's where it is. That's where it's going. Down those holes. This has never been this low ever. There's no water in there. Oh my god. Just close it. We should go up to the rig and ask them, are they using any fresh water from this area for their drilling practices or whatever the hell they do with the water? I mean, it goes down a bit, the flow goes down a bit in the winter, but not like that.
Let's go then.
Because it wasn't like this before they put that rig up. Let's just go. If they don't change things, the Athabasca River is going to be dry, and I can't imagine that. I mean, that's glacier fed, so plus the glaciers are melting so fast now. Like, there's one that's completely gone now. If you go to ice fields, like I remember when I was even 12, it was massive. You know, it's melted down that much. So I don't know.
For years, the main argument against limiting greenhouse gas emissions has been that it would hurt our economy. That's the reason U.S. President George Bush gave for backing out of the Kyoto Protocol. And it's why Prime Minister Stephen Harper has said that any action against climate change would have to happen without harming the Canadian economy.
Canada has spent $6 billion on carbon emission reduction programs, but has met none of its targets for 15 years. One reason is that extraction of a barrel of oil from the tar sands results in 3 times the greenhouse gas emissions as does extraction of a barrel of conventional oil. Near the oil sands is the Athabasca Glacier, part of the Columbia ice fields, one of the world's largest storehouses of fresh water. With a warming climate, the glacier has already receded 1.5 kilometers and lost half its volume.
We're entering very clearly into this period of climate change, where we're going to see major impacts on the availability of the runoff that makes it possible for our freshwater sources to exist. The runoff from glaciers, of mountaintops and things like that. And once they have melted, that is it.
The land looks lonely. Yeah, it's that bad. I just look at the shoreline here. I can see how much water has been gone. Yeah, looks like it's been gone about 8 to 9 feet. That island way back over there used to be just surrounded by water. Now it's all land. And when I come in and think about it, it makes my heart cry. So all what was given to us is destroyed just because of one thing, oil. Why? We are situated on probably the largest freshwater deltas in the world. At this given time right now, it's pretty much drying up.
So what are you guys doing?
Just right
This guy's
now.
going to be our next chief. This guy right here.
That's what I hope.
Pretty good choice, yeah. I think so. We're taking my glasses. Respect here. Talk to you later.
I'm quite sure that many of our people are feeling that the chiefs are selling us out big time. They feel very discouraged. A lot of people are looking for change, and what they see in me is they see that I can bring those changes to the people. I will not bend over to cater to industry, because my people are at stake. Our livelihood is at stake.
Are you ready? Chief Ballot? Alan Adam? Chief Deputy? Alan Adam? Alan Adam?
No competition, man. I don't know.
It's 3 to 1. Right on, we did it, eh?
We're working very hard as an industry to mitigate that environmental impact. It's also very important to think about the economic benefit that flows from oil sands activity, and it's important to think about the socioeconomic benefits that are derived from it.
I think everybody's afraid of what the answers may be, because the answers may unfold to be that the impacts and the effects are so severe that things have to stop. And if those are the answers, then I don't know if industry and government is prepared to stop. I don't know if Canada is prepared to stop.
While Chief Alan Adam vows to fight oil sands development, Dr. O'Connor is facing his own battle. After voicing his concerns about the high rates of disease in the community, Health Canada has filed an official complaint accusing the doctor of, among other things, causing undue alarm.
To be accused of professional misconduct and blocking access to files at the nursing station and raising undue alarm in the community and engendering a sense of mistrust in the community and the powers that be. I walked into this community, had to gain their trust. And all the time, and since all this started, I've been told again and again, we have asked and pleaded for studies to be done. We've trusted that they would be done, and they haven't been done. So I walked into a community that didn't trust, the government or government agencies. Nobody's alarmed in the community. People are pissed off in the community about the issues and the fact that they haven't been looked at again and again and again. My numbers of people with these various illnesses appear to be much higher than what they have. Yet I've gone through every file, and I've talked to, say, the home care nurse who's been here on and off for over 20 years, I've talked to relatives and people that I've known and treated myself. So I've got all the information, and if they need to verify it, all they need to do is come up, walk in my shoes for half a day, and they'll realise.
What disturbs me is by carrying out his general duties as a physician, suggesting that there are disproportionate rates of rare cancers in Fort Chipewyan. Another health agency called Health Canada found it in their wisdom to lodge a complaint against a physician who's doing his job, just doing his job. And is it because we're Indigenous people that Health Canada, Alberta Health Industry, anybody that had the power to make a difference in terms of maybe finding some resolution to Dr. O'Connor's claims as opposed to lodging complaints against him?
In 1 week into the job, I've just suspended all negotiations with industry, and it's for the benefit of the community. And and I have no choice to do it because we got to know where we're going here, and human health is a big concern.
We have to take our power back and say, come on, you guys, it's not right. They are killing us, and the sad thing about it is that they tried to shut Dr. O'Connor off. But in our eyes, Dr. O'Connor is a hero, and the government can't take that away from us.
Well, I don't know if they're going to that, right? Yeah, it looks like some setup stuff for, I don't know. For a rig to be above us, on top of the ridge, drilling. It's drilling underground, it's going to aquifers. So I have a lot of concern because I can see that our water level is very low. And I know that they use water right from the ground for their operations. So I want to know a little more science behind it and see exactly if their activity is affecting our spring. Oh, hi there. Hi. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up. So, yeah, well, I'm trying to find out who...
What I'm trying to explain to you is I drill a hole.
Yeah.
And you can turn that off, or you can leave one of the two. Is it okay to ask you something? No.
Well, you gotta start moving now. You guys watching.
You know, I was trying to be really nonchalant, but I thought I'd get something out of it, a little bit, but nothing.
I asked two simple questions. Number one, am I actually seeing clusters of disease? Number two, where are they coming from? Could it be genetics, lifestyle, simply bad luck, or could there be environmental effects affecting the community for a chip? We have called for a baseline health study of the community in the recent past couple of years, but I've discovered that actually there have been demands for this and recommendations for years and years before this, and it's never been done. I don't understand why.
Today, the genocide of the Fort Chipewyan people is at stake for the benefit and the prosperity of Alberta, of Canada. This shouldn't be occurring today in Fort Chipewyan. This shouldn't be occurring in Alberta or Canada as a G8 country.
The area is vast, a toxic pond that stretches for several square kilometers, and a landing point on Monday for hundreds of migratory birds. Out of almost 500 that landed on this toxic pond at St. Croix's oil sand site, only a handful have been recovered. And now there seems to be little hope of saving the ducks.
A completely oiled bird would sink nearly immediately.
This all coming as Alberta is on a $25 million PR campaign supporting the oil sands.
If I could take you as the one that you love, I'm thinking of the things that we're dreaming of. Life could be sweet for us. Oh, 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 life could be fine.
Today's government and stakeholders can look back with pride at the approach we all took in managing the oil sands deposit and the consistent and acceptable picture we have created from whatever perspective you look at it. The world is no longer watching us to see if we'll fail. They are now lined up to learn from our success. Or we have achieved what was predicted by a federal government official who visited the Athabasca region in 1890, who said, and I quote that, "When the hour of development comes for oil sands, it will prove to be one of the wonders of northern Canada." Thanks for your time.
You know, the announcement last night is Heather Kennedy, and this lady I know very well from Suncor, is now in the government and in the area of approvals. So what does that say to you?
Well, it's not only unusual, it's completely unacceptable. We have now someone who's a senior official with Suncor, has been made a deputy minister responsible for development around Fort McMurray, and Suncor is still paying her salary. And the conflict of interest here is so thick, you couldn't cut it with a knife.
The First Nations felt it was important that the company Suncor come to the community and talk about and report and communicate some of the incidences of especially discharges into the Athabasca River.
Okay, any of these different types of discharges, would you suggest that some of them are cancer-causing contaminants in them? Carcinogenic pHs?
Well, it's all a function of dosage and exposure over time. So, it's an individual basis too. Different humans are more susceptible to cancers than others. So
yes,
they could contribute, but I can't conclusively say that they do due to a number of factors.
Well, then why are we doing it? We've lost a lot of people here. We've lost a lot of people. We bury people all the time. And the government still gives out their licenses. You should be ashamed of yourself.
we work with the government on the rules that they give us. We try our best to actually do better than those rules.
Christine, I think there's a lot of angry people here. You wonder why we're angry? Nobody wants to drink the water or eat the fish or the other wildlife. And when 500 ducks die, not only the Prime Minister and the Premier call for a full investigation, but we're asking for a simple baseline health study, and nobody's on the radar screen as far as coming to this community and listening and trying to find some resolution to the life and death situations we're experiencing here. Not Suncor, not Syncrude, not the Alberta government or the federal government.
It's really hard to hear what you're telling us. And you're telling us that you don't trust what you're hearing from us. You don't trust what you're hearing from the government. You're not trusting when we say that the water's okay.
I got a question for you guys that do not live here. Why did you guys bring the bottled water? You guys, this way you guys doing that, you show us there's a problem here. And another question, would you guys live here? Would you eat the fish with tumors on them?
Sometimes we speak in two different languages, and that's what I'm hearing here tonight as well. We're speaking two different languages, and we're not understanding each other. So how do we start? How do we start talking to each other so we can understand what's going on and get to the bottom of what's causing you to be so angry and scared? Because we don't want this to happen either, okay?
I could tell you right from the leader's point, this could turn out to be a real big mess in the court system. I caution you guys to work hand in hand with First Nations people in the region, and when we start raising the alarms on some kind of issues, we're not just talking just because we want to get attention. We are talking because our community is at risk, and we will not stand for it any longer.
Oil is like a wild animal. Whoever captures it, owns it. So said the famous industrialist John Paul Getty, who founded Getty Oil. In Canada, his words still hold true. You don't own the oil unless you own shares in ExxonMobil, Suncor, Petro-Canada, or one of the big private corporations that control Canada's oil supply.
Basically, we're not looking for a payout. We're looking to have this area protected, and it's the headwater for a lot of the rivers that are there, and I don't know, I think we're going to have to call Department of Fisheries and Oceans, too. There's nothing neat. Okay, it has to go through Alberta Environment. Now, does Alberta Environment have the power to stop these guys until we can get some science behind this? Okay, great, thanks. She just hung up the phone as soon as she found out. She's like, if this is being taped, then I better get my supervisor and we'll talk about some things and we'll call you back. She was the person that,
Was she with Alberta Environment?
No, she was EUB.
Oh, see what I mean? We have to go outside the province, that's what I've been saying. Because people here, there's nothing that they can do and they just keep throwing us around in circles, so...
As a leader, it takes to my heart that the land is in jeopardy. As a First Nations people, You have to go out there and you have to start letting the world know of what is happening in our region. Because if the world does not know what is happening in our region, then they will just keep on demanding the oil that's coming from the tar sands. First time in Ottawa, yeah, no, I get kind of nervous at times when I speak in public, but how else are you going to get your message across? And you have to go out to the public and speak out in the public, so. The reason why we're up here in Ottawa this week is to drum up support from the federal government, who is responsible for First Nations across Canada and have a fiduciary role to protect First Nations interests, which the provincial government of Alberta does not recognize anything of what we are saying and have no way of the intention of protecting our environment and our health issues in the community of Fort Chip. And we feel that the Alberta government, along with industry, is not following any kind of guidelines that are being in place at this point in the stage.
There's nowhere else on Earth where we're talking about destroying an area the size of Florida. There's nowhere else on Earth where you have toxic ponds that are so big that you can now see them from space.
That report didn't get much recognition from Stelmach, who dismissed it.
One of the reports, I believe, is from the Environmental Defense League. They're out of Toronto. Obviously, silk-suited environmentalists that really don't know the facts.
His tune changed when he was confronted by one of those silk-suited environmentalists from Fort Chipewyan, who showed up at a campaign gathering with the report in hand.
When you look at this report that was just released about the environmental league?
Yeah, I heard a lot about it.
Yeah, we get the impression that the government never responds to the many claims, life and death situations included, but we're experiencing a lot of food and a lot of rare cancers and so on. Yeah.
Stelmach says it's his job to protect the prosperity of Alberta, and he would visit Fort Chipewyan after the election if he gets support from the local people.
Extracting and upgrading synthetic crude oil from tar sands is incredibly energy intensive. I think people will be shocked to hear how much oil the U.S. gets from Canada.
Well, President Barack Obama is heading to Canada today for his first foreign trip as president. Obama and Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper are expected to discuss trade issues, energy, and the environment. A coalition of environmental groups is urging President Obama to cut back on America's dependence on oil from the tar sands in Alberta, Canada.
Where does the United States buy most of its imported oil? If you said Saudi Arabia, you're wrong. Our biggest supplier is Canada. Maybe we should moderate our tone on renegotiating NAFTA.
Oil sands production is developing at breakneck speed. This pace is driven by corporate interests aimed at integrating North America's economies and resources. The North American Free Trade Agreement's Proportionality Clause ensures that an average percentage of energy resources continue to flow south. This guarantees an increasing export of a finite resource. The oil sands are quickly becoming the largest industrialized project in human history. With a proposed 5-fold increase in production, oil sands networks will soon span the continent. A new agreement called the Security and Prosperity Partnership further expands NAFTA, ensuring energy security for the United States, but not for Canada. Canada remains one of the only industrialized countries that has not saved any energy for itself. These resource agreements can also apply to water.
The Prime Minister brags that Canada is an emerging energy superpower. Superpowers are supposed to influence world events as independent powers. What kind of superpower lets its foreign-controlled the corporations dominate the resources, gives away the biggest resource, the tar sands, at 25 cents per barrel to giant transnationals like Exxon, gives up the right to set its own price, gives up the right to limit exports so it can cut greenhouse gases? What kind of superpower, energy superpower, discusses meeting its neighbors' energy security supply when it doesn't even have a plan to meet Canadians' energy security?
We've become an energy satellite of the United States. There's just no question about it, and it is NAFTA and the proportional sharing clause in NAFTA that has brought that about. Now Canadians are having to ask themselves some hard questions about what will happen, for example, if we do reach a situation where we have a real supply shortage in this country of natural gas. What will happen when we try to make a move to conserve and redirect a certain amount of that natural gas that's a part of the exports to the United States to serve our own needs, at that point we will realize that we can't do it.
Treaties are signed between nations. My First Nation is a government unto itself, on our lands, on our traditional lands. It comes a day when Alberta and the federal government have broken every promise that they made to me in the treaty, and that treaty is no good. I'm saying, take back your scrap of paper and, hey, I'll take back my country.
Oh my God. Don't get me forward. Don't tuck your legs up too far. Okay. See all this land here, this here is all dug up, tar sands taken out of it. They replanted trees all back there. Yeah. Wherever this land is reclaimed, is put back. So now, wherever buffalo can live, anything can live. Huh. I see. So that's why they got the buffalo. Yeah, well, whenever they dig up the land, you got to put it back the same way it was. That was the law, that was the agreement that they made with the natives. Huh.
The land can be reclaimed. The original value is subjective because the original value had a lot of hydrocarbons in it. The soil had a lot of hydrocarbons, which would have limited some of the use of that land. Over the next several decades, that hydrocarbon, which is the oil, would be removed. And so they are correct in saying in some aspects the land would be better than it was before, but in a way, oil is a contaminant, so that's being removed.
So by removing the oil, we're taking away a contaminant from the region?
Correct.
Can you explain it?
The fact that we are taking 8 to 12% of oil that is in the sand out already improves the condition of the soil in terms of oil being in the sand.
But if you dig 90 meters down to clear away the forest, it's chopping down vast areas of forest, do you consider that to be an improvement of the natural environment there?
Not necessarily. Removing the forest depends on the perspective. Removing trees is not necessarily an improvement. But can the trees be brought back over the next 50 to 60 years? I would think yes.
To their credit, they've convened several meetings of international experts who just say, those wetlands took thousands of years to develop. We can't reclaim those in any reasonable time scale. So they know reclamation to anything like the original function is impossible. They've been told that. And still, you can turn on the TV and hear the propaganda. They don't want the public to know that.
Why does this situation, which I'm outlining to you, which is the destruction of a pristine aquifer, not fall into the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act? It's not just a water use, it's a water contamination issue. We're not going to have any clean drinking water in these mountains if these guys are allowed to get away with what they're going to do. What are we going to drink? What are your children going to drink, you know? And they say to us, oh, do you drive a car? And I'm like, yeah, of course I drive. Do you drink water? You know, the Athabasca oil sands is going to suck up the whole Athabasca River, the environmentalists say, if oil and gas isn't stopped. And you're telling me the Alberta environment cannot do a single thing unless they can prove that? Well, I haven't seen them prove anything. What am I supposed to do? Yeah, you too. Bye. He says if it's that. I deal with criminal things, and if the guy was totally useless.
That was Alberta Environment.
That was Alberta Environment, yeah.
Market-driven international trade agreements make it more and more difficult for citizens to challenge resource extraction at the national level. So, representatives from Fort Chip are going international.
We're about to make a presentation on the tar sands. This is a dedicated session on the tar sands and with the delegation from Fort Chippewa making the presentation. So,
are you nervous?
No. Are you kidding? The Miccosukee and the Athabasca Dene seek support from the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues for a call of a moratorium on any new approvals for tar sands applications.
When I came back from Canada, from their homelands, you know, I was just I was in awe. I was just like devastated in my reality check because I travel all over the world to indigenous territories and in our developing countries and third world countries. I mean, there's really terrible things happening with mineral extraction, you know.
But when I went up to the tar sands and saw what's going on up there, it was really like, that's the most extreme that I've seen, especially in a developed country like Canada, who prides itself on human rights. To allow something like that, happening, Modar is alive and well up in northern Canada, human destruction and contamination of water, it's a serious issue.
What you got here right now is the making for total devastation of our country. Hunger for oil, hunger for energy, and the greed of every shareholder. There's a big demand on the street for crack cocaine, so there's always going to be a supplier. There's a big demand for oil, so Alberta is going to be a supplier for as long as it lasts. If it takes the next 200 years, 300 years to get it all out of the ground, they're going to do it. And then what?
We're creating a vicious cycle of water contamination and depletion to get the oil out of the ground. And this vicious cycle is not something that just happens. It is something that is technologically created and technologically driven. We all say that, the kind of relatively affluent lifestyle is something we want to keep. The American dream, we want to keep going. And then permeating all of that is that notion that technologically we can find solutions to these very, very real problems that are on the horizon. So the problem of peak oil, the problem of climate change, and the problem of resource depletion, there will be a technological solution somewhere. Somewhere we will find it.
This new technology, carbon capture and storage, is the subject of today's announcement. When fully commercialized, it will collect carbon dioxide emissions from oil sands operations and coal-fired electrical plants and seal them deep underground.
Now, there are some in your country, and Canada as well, who feel that the oil sands is dirty oil because of the extraction process. What do you think? Is it dirty oil?
Well, what we know is that oil sands creates a big carbon footprint. I think to the extent that Canada and the United States can collaborate on ways that we can sequester carbon, capture greenhouse gases before they're emitted into the atmosphere, that's going to be good for everybody. Because if we don't, then we're going to have a ceiling at some point in terms of our ability to expand our economies and maintain the standard of living that's so important. And ultimately, I think this can be solved by technology.
We've taken it for granted that these natural resources are there, that we can, sure, they may be non-renewable in many cases, but that's all right. Well, technology will help us find something else. But sooner or later, we come up against the whole question of whether or not we can continue an unsustainable kind of civilization and lifestyle. In this case, we've become incredibly dependent upon oil for everything in our society. And that's the problem.
We are truly scraping the bottom of the barrel in the tar sands, faced not only with increasing fresh water scarcity, but irrefutable climate change. The absurdity of our oil addiction has never been more apparent. The only real answer will mean giving up a lifestyle that has clearly become unsustainable.
In the end, Dr. John O'Connor was effectively silenced for about a year. When his case was finally brought before the College of Physicians and Surgeons, the college cleared him of all charges but one. The charge of causing undue alarm still has not been resolved.
Gene, come on down. Just can't wait for things to get back to normal. Let's, focus on that. And I don't know, to be honest, if they ever will be truly normal. I got a letter. The college writing to the lawyer again asking me to, because the college had met with the Health Canada physicians, and they'd gone over the same issues. And so I'm sort of being asked to almost recap. I don't know. I have nothing new to say. I stand by everything I've said. It was, looking back, it was extremely stressful. And it's not over yet.
Wow, look at that. That's a lot better.
Still pretty low, though. Okay, what do we got here? Can I focus?
Well, this actually used to overflow
Yeah.
when my parents first found this.
I mean, we feel a little bit better because they canceled all the pipeline projects and any of the future drilling for now. But yeah, so we don't know what that means. Like for the future, I don't know. So I'd like to have something in place before that happens again, because now it's sort of the quiet time again before the storm. So
all it takes is for oil to go up a few more dollars, and they'll be back here. And
if there's anything around here, yeah, they'll get it eventually. That's the problem. I don't even know now if I want to export the water. It's more just about, it's not about the business anymore. It really changed for me, and thinking, you know, do I want to fill, you know, millions of plastic bottles, you know, and that sort of contributes to our problem with, green, like it's more garbage that we don't need. And so, yeah, now I'm sort of shifting towards, you know, just the preservation of the water as opposed to profits.
What they're doing to us is wrong. And I'm not scared to voice my concern or even go up on a protest. This is not only a First Nations issue, this is a Canadian issue as well. And I don't think it's right that we should have to support the war that is happening throughout the world right now with our oil that's being developed here on the Athabasca region.